kind of goes in conjunction with the webinar we had on Tuesday, which is getting started with the desktop app. And some of the concepts will be revisited just with how to do them in the other platform. So just like the last time, I just want to start off with a quick explanation of what the software is, as it's a lot easier to start using a piece of software when you understand kind of what the intent is and what the point of it is. So at its core, the CRM is a contact management system, CRM in that case. So the actual abbreviation that we use for the app itself is very indicative of what it does. So what that means is it helps you to manage your contacts and its relationships with the various trails that you need. And since ours is specifically for commercial real estate agents, that means how these contacts are gonna relate to your deals, your conversations with them, any documents that have been signed, and how they relate to buildings as well. So that's kind of the idea. Is it's a means of aggregating and storing that information that you've got, your contacts, your properties, and being able to pull up that information as needed for making your deals. It seems like someone's asking if is everybody able to hear me? I do see someone saying that they're not able to, so I just wanted to confirm if anyone can just type in the question section whether or not you can, although okay, perfect. So unfortunately, I don't really know what I can do to alleviate that. So if any of you do have any audio issues, though, this is being recorded. All of our webinars are, and they do get posted online to our knowledge base, and we do send a link out to them after the webinar, so you can all go back and view it at a later date as well. So if there are ever any issues, you can definitely still end up seeing the whole webinar in its entirety shortly after it's wrapped up. But yeah, it's a means of taking that information, storing it, and using it for later. What that means is going to, vary individually. So, whether you're tracking your historical correspondence with your clients, how that relates to the buildings and the deals, the main purpose of it is a data store in order to bring up that information at a later date when it's applicable. So we'll kind of talk about it to that end and go from there. So the first thing I want to start with is actually a step aside from the online and app versions, and that's going to be talking about getting the database set up. So first off, there are two different ways you can have your database set up presently with RealNex Core CRM. One, you can have the desktop database and have that synchronizing to the online database, so the two are always in communications with one another, updating each other. And alternatively, you can have an online-only database. Now, there are some pitfalls and benefits that go along with either of those, but really, for the most part, the best bet's going to be using the desktop and the online, unless there's something preventing you from doing so, as generally, at least as of right now, most of the functionality is available in the desktop that is online, whereas the other can't be set. There's a lot of functionality on the online version that's not going to be replicated as of yet, that's on the desktop version already, that's not replicated as of yet on the online version, as we're still working on adding all of the functionality, as well as new functionality that only exists, and there's a few of those pieces here which we'll get into as well. So we'll talk about the benefits of having the online database only, but quick aside is if you are using a desktop database and an online database, along with the desktop software that gets installed, there's also a sync tool that gets installed and needs to be run on either the server computer or one of the computers that is running the CRM. And so in your toolbar down here in the bottom right in Windows or wherever you have your taskbar set up, you'll see a little blue CRM Live icon, and that's what actually facilitates the synchronizing between the desktop CRM, which we had a webinar on Tuesday, and the online database, which is what we're seeing over here on the left side of my screen. So if you don't see that running, the only thing you need to do to get that application running is click on the Start menu in Windows and type Live Sync, and that will bring up any applications that match that. And then generally your best bet is to right-click on it and run it as an administrator. And so this tool just runs in the background and will take, in my case, I have it set up to every minute, but you can go to Tools and Options to set the options for it. I generally suggest start with Windows. I don't because I have to synchronize a lot of different databases, so I kind of have to do it on the fly. But for most people, starting with Windows is ideal. That way you don't have to remember it every time you restart or when Windows updates automatically restart you. You can also set how often the synchronize is going to happen. I'm really impatient, so I set mine to 1 minute, but by default it's going to be 20. And you can turn on or off attachment upload. For the most part, the defaults are going to be the best steps on this, but you can always mess with the auto sync interval, which will change how often the synchronize happens, and also start with Windows is definitely ideal. So once that's running, any changes that you make on the online database or on the app, which I'll bring up over here as well, are going to also synchronize back down to the desktop application and vice versa. So especially on a team environment where you have multiple people inputting information in different places, it makes it to where you can see those changes very quickly. Like in my case, within 1 minute of data input, I'll end up seeing it in all of the different locations. Let's see. Now, I did discuss user management on the desktop version already on the Tuesday webinar, and if you are using the desktop version in addition to the online version, I generally suggest going with that as it's a little bit easier to navigate the user management in there, but do want to talk about that on the online version, as we do have a number of customers that use just the online database, and that number is increasing as we include more and more features that make that gap a lot smaller. So to set up users on the online version, you go to My Account at the top, Administration, and User Management. It's going to open up a dialog window here where you can either search at the top. That's only going to really be applicable if you have a large number of users, as generally this list will only go to about here with 15 people. But to add a new user, you can just hit Add New, and I can also uncheck this to show all of my inactive users. And then hit Add New to add a new user, and you're greeted with the same information that you would see on the desktop version, where you enter the ID, their login name, their email address, which is important for how they're going to log into the software. And then you can set the user permissions, which by default are going to have the exact same settings on the desktop version, as well as give you options for team membership. So you can set up your teams in here as well. Now, teams are a way of being able to kind of segregate information, make some information private to one or more users. So teams can be thought of effectively as a privacy setting for database records. So that's why it shows up on the user level, because this is where you can set up which teams this user can have access to. So the way that Teams works, if we just go out of here, I don't want to actually add a user as of yet, but if we go into here under Administration, we see Team Management. And so very similar to the user management screen, you hit Add New to add a new team in this case. And so you first give the team a name. So I'm just going to name it retail team, as that's a good example of a use for this. A lot of teams will have their information segregated into different product types. That way each person is only seeing information that's actually applicable to them, and they're not seeing, the thousands of records that have nothing to do with their market. So a lot of the time teams are set up exactly for that. In addition to being able to have private records, but private is already a default team in the system. So each user, so there are two teams by default in the system, private and everyone. Everyone being the opposite of private, where everyone can see that information. Teams bridge that gap to where you can have two or more people that are able to see records, but able to also have people that are not. So it's effectively private plus. So hit save there. Of course, I just added the exact same team twice, so we'll pretend that didn't happen. All right. So back to the user management real quick. I'm just going to edit one of these actually, as that'll save me from having to have an extra user in here. And then you can also set global team permissions. So this is for records that are added to Team Everyone, what they're able to do with them. If they're able to edit those records or add records into those into that team. So that would make it to where you would force people to only use a specific team. Let's see. So that's generally going to be it for the setup. Now, from this point going forward, it's going to be sort of a tandem using the online web version on the left side and the actual app on the right. So just want to make sure any of you that haven't gotten it yet, any of you that do have the RealNex CRM core subscription, and if you don't, you can sign up for a free trial by downloading the app. It's a free app that you can download from either the Apple Store or the Google Play Store, and it allows you to access this information on the fly from any of those mobile devices. Now, really, one thing I definitely like to stress is that with the desktop version and the online version versus the app, and I'd say more so the desktop versus the app, there are really different tools to kind of go about similar things. So like you would have a spade and a rake, or spade and a rake in order to deal with gardening. They are definitely used for different purposes, and while one might be able to passably do the job of the other, it's not a bad idea to think of them as different tools for different jobs, because a lot of the time one's going to be better at it than the other. I mean, the mobile application is designed exactly with that in mind, but it has the shortcomings of being on a much smaller screen and having limitations for data entry. It's not, well, at least for me, it's not nearly as easy to type on a phone screen as it is on a keyboard, although I think the younger you get, the less that's the case for the most part. So without further ado, we're going to go into adding records into contacts and companies, as those two are pretty intrinsically linked together. And a lot of the times with the CRM, data entry can be saved by entering multiple types of records at the same time. And so I'm going to start from the same screen, and this is actually what you'll see when you initially open the app on your mobile device. And as you can kind of see, I'm cheating as I can use my mouse and keyboard to work with it. So I'm just going to reopen contacts, so we're looking at the same screen here. So adding a new contact and at the same time a new company. So on the actual web version, it's going to be the orange Add New button, and that's going to be pretty consistent across the board. If you go into companies and want to add just a new company, you would do the exact same thing. Whereas on the app, on the actual mobile app, it's going to be an orange plus button at the top right of your screen. And you're going to be greeted with the exact same pieces of information, just in, of course, a different way of viewing it. So start off entering in the contact's name. I'm just going to make something up. Perfect. And so I also mentioned that I wanted to add a company simultaneously. So I'm going to go ahead and just type in the this contact's company information. San Diego, make an investor, and just quickly. Now, if you notice, when I actually typed in the zip code and hit tab, it automatically populated the city and state for you. So that makes it to where data entry is consistent. Just something to keep in mind when you're doing that is it's a lot easier to just type in the zip code and have it populate automatically, and it is an up-to-date version of the postal code map from the U.S. Postal Service, as well as the Canadian postal codes as well. So once we fill that in, we'll hit save, and we'll see select contact company. So we'll have two options in this case, three if it actually found a match. So every time you add a new contact and enter in company information, it's going to search in your companies to see if that company record already exists. In this case, it did not find something called the Feinstein Company or anything similar to that, or at the exact same location. So it gives us the option to either create a new company or not to. In our case, I wanted to, so I'll check that and hit OK. And that's going to bring up the new company screen. From here, we'll just go ahead and hit OK, hit save, and go ahead and hit no on that. And now we'll be brought to our brand new contact record. So going to be pretty similar sort of stuff over here. We're going to just do another person named apparently I can't. Success. Okay. Okay, so we'll go ahead and hit OK now, and save. So the automatic company creation is not set up yet on the app, so wanted to show the differences there. That is something that is coming, but basically with everything we're having to write this from the ground up. So in this case, that's one of the differences there. Although it's also a simple matter of we could go to the company record and search for the company and add the contact directly from there, which I'll do next. But one thing that I wanted to touch on when adding a new contact is, or when adding a new contact here, is there's this auto address button. So when you click that button, it'll automatically use your phone's location services to figure out where you are. So it assumes that you want to add the address for the person from there. Now this actually also can be very beneficial if you're adding a property record while you're on the mobile device. This address actually isn't quite correct, as location services usually are a little bit off one way or the other, but that's simply fixed by just updating the actual number that it should be and hitting OK. Now I said that you instead go to the company record and search for the company. So if you want to bring up a specific company, just click in the top on the mobile app, and there we go. I ended up adding two. That's why it wasn't doubled. So from here, we can just go to the contact section on the company record and hit add. From there, we can then name this person and hit save. Similar on the online version on the web app. So if we go and find the Feinstein Company, and the similarity there is you're going to use the keyword search here at the top. Okay, so there was a question that I think should be brought up. The thing on the right-hand side, this is actually the mobile app on the smartphone. So this is actually, this window on the right-hand side is actually my smartphone screen being mirrored onto my desktop, so I could actually share the screen with you. So everything on the right side is how it's done in the mobile app. Left side is on the web version through a web browser. Okay, so go here, we click on the company, and then click on contacts. Now first off, we see that contact we just added to the company here. But in the similar vein, we can just hit add new and enter in a new company here as well. So Rick Sanchez. So now we have Toby and Rick both under the Feinstein Company, and it might actually take a minute for the app. So let's do this. And now we have Rick Sanchez on there as well. So the online web version on the left side and the smartphone mobile app version both actually connect to the exact same database. So any changes that you're making are actually updating the exact same information in real time. So with the mobile app, it's actually connecting to the database on the cloud in order to pull that information and push any changes up. Same thing exactly goes for the mobile browser. So in effect, when you're using the desktop version and the mobile app version or the web version, there's actually two databases involved. The desktop database version that's either on your server or on your desktop computer, as well as the online database that powers both the web portal version as well as the smartphone version, or it would actually also work on tablets as well. Worth definitely mentioning, guys. Personally, I think it looks quite a bit better on the tablet, as it's right in that nice middle ground where you have enough space where it's not too large still to take out and easily bring with you in a messenger bag or briefcase. Okay. One functionality that was actually just added to the online version is the list view of contact records. So by default, you'll see the what's it called, the card view where you see a number per page, but it's always three different columns. And now, in addition to that, at the top left, there's these two options, either the grid view of that or the list view, which gives you a list now. So there's going to be new functionality that's going to be in the next coming weeks here added to what you can do from this list view. But when you actually, if you notice, there's a checkbox on the left side which lets you work with multiple contacts at the same time, or multiple properties for that matter. Once you check one or more records, you'll see a few different options show up here. And as we finish these different functionalities, you'll see more appear here, such as to delete contact records, definitely to export to Excel, export to the different RealNex platforms. So that's all going to be forthcoming as well. This is just the first two that were added, are the ability to initially add records to a group or to record history records for multiple contacts or properties or whatever types of records simultaneously. So then, for example, if we wanted to add these 4 contact records to a group, we could use this group drop down here and go add to group, and it'll bring up the group window where we have a selection to either use one of our existing groups, for example, Balboa Office Suspects, or add a brand new group by clicking the Add New Group button. So I'm going to go ahead and add these 4 to Balboa Office Suspects and hit yes. So now, let's see, let me make sure that, oh yeah, that's actually exactly where I was Group Basics. So now what that does is, so there's not a way as of yet to add multiple contacts on the mobile app at a time to a group. So that's something that I would say either do on the online web portal version or on the desktop as of right now, although we have plans to add functionality like that, but we have to kind of do it side by side with each other. But if we go to one of those contacts now, we'll see under groups, it'll show that group that contact is now a member of. So as of right now, that's, I believe, the only functionality with groups on the actual app. But in addition, on the web portal version, you can go here to Show Filter. What is it? This is actually just brand newly added, so I'm trying to remember how to, oh, group is at the top right. You click on the group, select Balboa Office Suspects, and it'll show all of the contacts that are members of that group. Now, one thing to keep in mind is right now the list view is, let's bring it back to all contacts real quick. So right now the list view is only showing 15 records at a time. You can modify that by using the drop down at the top, but I definitely suggest keeping it light and instead using searches when you can. Although there's definitely times when you want to just look at, as many records as humanly possible. So you might want to set that to 300 when, wanting to go through and just figure out which contacts you want in a specific group. This, however, is the exact reason you don't necessarily want to do that too much, as it can be monumentally slower and a little bit taxing. So it's not a problem to do it, when you're doing a group like that, but then change it back when you're going to go searching for contacts and stuff, as otherwise those 5 and 10 second wait periods do end up adding up quite a bit. But from there you can just check whichever contacts you want to from here. And this time, let's say we wanted to add a history record to all of those, which we'll go a little bit more in depth into history later on in this webinar, but it'll also have a follow-up webinar specifically on on project management and deal management, which will go much more into the history process than this webinar can. But you can drop this down and choose Add History and create a history for this. So an example of that would be if these are 4 people that you emailed a document to. You could record that in here, send, set the project to Balboa. And hit save. So quick step back to the groups. So now with groups, to set up the actual groups, that's going to be under My Account, Personal, and Groups. Now there's a number of different ways that you can also get there. So to set up a new group, I would probably, there's an easier way where you can just instead from this selection screen, let's go ahead and check all 193. So instead of having to specifically go and add the groups through My Account, Personal, Groups each time, where you can just hit Add New Group and create the group, instead we can click Group and do Add to Group and click Add New Group from here. If you notice, that's the exact same window that you get from going to My Account, Personal, Groups. And anywhere where you're going to have a group selection screen, you're going to have an option to either select an existing group or create a new group at the top. When you hit Add New Group, this is where you'll give the group a name. So we will actually call these Webinar Contacts. The next option is the type of group that is. So these are going to be your different options that you have in here, either for contacts, properties, companies, and so on, or none, which means that this group will actually exist in all of those different places. So none would actually show up in all of contact, property, company, and so on. So I'm going to keep it at none in this case and just hit save. I apparently click off of it. So now I can just hit add contacts and it'll add those 193 contacts to that new group that we just created. So now if we go here and let's see, I probably need to go back out and load another window, go back to contacts, there we go. So if we go to groups, might actually need to close the app and reopen it, as what can happen, it actually stores some information in memory, and that will usually go away once you close out of the app. So let's just do that, close all, and reopen the RealNex Core app. There we go. And now we can just show the contacts in Webinar Contacts, hit OK. Now, of course, that's going to show us still the same 193 records because we just added all of those contacts to that group in that case. So the next thing I want to talk about is adding properties from either one of these applications. So I'm going to click on properties here and do the same thing over here. Actually, I won't, because we're going to be adding a new property with the app version. When you actually bring this, so if you click menu, it's going to bring a menu where you can navigate to the different tables in there. But in addition to navigating to these different sections, you also can click the plus button directly next to them to add a new record of that type. So with the online version, we'd have to go to properties and hit add new. With the web app, we can just hit this plus on the menu that's a pull out from the left side and get the same screen. So very similar again. One thing I do want to talk about differently on this. So first off, let's go to the address. So this is where the auto address functionality can become a lot more beautiful, is when you're adding properties out in the field, especially if you're adding like spaces and so on where you can take photos. If you hit auto address here, see, I'm on a corner, and that's actually the first time that's happened to me, oddly enough. My house is literally on a corner, so interesting. I'm going to stick with it because I've not seen that happen. So one thing that's also of a benefit of being on the mobile app is when you hit the add photo, you're going to get two options at the bottom to either choose a photo that's existing on your phone or take a photo, which I really have no idea what that's going to do. Does not seem to pick up the camera, unfortunately, on the mirroring. I'll have to figure that out at another time, because that's kind of a cool function, because I mean, you can, while you're out in the field, add a property and add the photo directly from there. Whereas with the web version, you can add the information easily, but there's not quite as easy of a way to attach photos. So definitely score one for the mobile app version, and definitely shows that there's, two different tools for similar jobs, where on a singular basis, the app a lot of the times is going to be an easier way to input one record, but working with multiple records is usually where the desktop version and the web portal version are going to usually benefit. So the general gist of adding a property record is going to be pretty basic for the most part. First off, add the name of the property. There you go, Webinar Pikes Apartments. Select the property type, choose an address for it. Oops. I'm having zero luck clicking on things today. I'm going to blame a ton of coffee plus cold medication, which is always a weird combination to be on. All right. I'll just use easier to type things. Okay, 85143. All right, choose. So if you notice, there's also sometimes when one zip code is going to have multiple selections. This is what that ends up looking like. So in my case, it's actually Santan Valley, but it is split across Queen Creek, Santan Valley, and for some reason the post office likes to have multiple spellings for things like that. Heights, Valley, things like that. So next up, we have the contact section. And on the mobile app on the right-hand side, you see that there's similar options here as well. One for the site contact, one for the owner, and one for the agent. So each of these are search boxes, which if you click on them, you can either select a contact or select a company. When you hit select contact, it's going to bring up a search window. Now, of course, you can enter as much or as little as you know about the person, and then navigate through, and let's say we want this to be Chelsea Brubaker. So in this case, we'll do that, hit select. Same thing goes from the mobile app. And then you can hit search to search for a contact from here as well. So I'm just going to do Richard Alexander and hit OK. You can also add a site contact and an agent, and all three of these are going to give you the option of adding that as a company record or as a contact record. So I'll hit save and hit save. And so now we have two new properties in our database there. So now on the details, I'm going to primarily, this is more of a concept thing, and it's pretty much the same. Well, let's actually bring up the same property on both records now. So Balboa Office Park, Balboa Office Park. Okay, so I wanted to quickly go into a little bit of the information that shows up on the property screen and how the information in the CRM is laid out in general. So you might notice that there's a number of different words along the top that are set up as tabs of information. Now, contacts, properties, all of the different types of records are going to be set up in a similar way. If we go to contacts, we'll see a tab for events, projects, and so on. When you're on a property record, that's going to give you options for contacts that are associated as well as the main building information. Details is going to give you the more in-depth information about the property, the building class, condition, acreage, things like that, the actual meat of the property itself. The units tab, in this case, it's not going to actually have anything. It's a retail building and not, or an office building, and not a multifamily building. So units allows you to have. I know that I set up do not disturb mode. That was absolutely bizarre. I apologize for that. Let's go back to the properties. Okay, so I'm on projects actually. Properties. So the units allows you to add a multifamily unit mix to a building. So we'll come back and actually look at a building that has those in a moment. Spaces is going to be more applicable in this case, as that's going to be the individual leasable spaces that are in that building. And if you notice, it also gives you the tenant information, which ends up being a linked contact to these. So that's a concept that's used very regularly across the board in this software, is that the information links to other information that links to other information and so on down the line, which can be a little bit confusing at times, but that's exactly why we have these webinars and learning sessions, as nothing is a stand-in for experience and usage, to be brutally honest. But in this case, this is how the tenants will actually link back to your properties by way of space records that are under the spaces section here. So if we now click on one of these, let's say Suite 100, it'll open up a new page with the actual space details for that individual space. So each of these spaces on the right side are actually records in their own right with all of the lease information, linked tenant information, and so on. So if we go back to the property, we can add more spaces to the property by clicking that Add New button at the top, or clicking the plus while you're looking at the spaces on here. So it'll only give you a few different options off the bat, and as with most everything, it'll bring you up to a screen that gives you the ability to add more detailed information after the fact. So we can then hit floor 1, Suite 115, 1567 office. And then on here, we can click here and select a contact once again. So when we hit search, we can choose exactly who we want the person to be in. So we'll do John Slovicek there. Lease commencement, we'll say tomorrow. It's a pop-up restaurant that he's, or a pop-up office that he's using this for the weekend, and hit save there. So that'll add another row to this, and if we click on 115, we can then go and modify more of the information, add the usable square footage, clearance height, and so on. So back to I'm not going to add the same exact space on the mobile app, as its process is identical, fields are identical, it's just slightly different screens. So going across, I'll come back to the multifamily units. Well, let's take it aside. I'm sure I can find a property type. Multifamily. Now, there was a question on how do you set the default type to be, all right, I'll actually come to that question in a second, but I do want to actually take that while we're on this topic, so just one moment on that. So this is what the unit, multifamily unit mix is going to look like here. Let me just bring it up on the... So as you see, it just gives you a breakdown of the different unit types that you have in that property there. If you click on one of those, it'll give you the unit details where you can modify the units, the unit type, and so on. All right, so I'm going to go back to the actual property we were on a moment ago. Balboa Office Park. Okay, so when adding spaces, there was a question on how can you change the default setting to not be vacant for each space. So it's only actually going to be, the default checkbox isn't going to check as vacant. The only way that it's actually going to show up as vacant on the actual building is if you don't select a tenant. So there's not a way to have no tenant and have it not be vacant as well, if that's what the question was. So you do have to actually add the tenant in there in that case. So if you do need to, even put a placeholder type of tenant in there if you don't have the exact information, possibly do it without a company name, but it does have to have a tenant linked to not show as a vacant space in this case, like this here. All right, let's see. Definitely need to kind of start having a move on. Moving on the tabs, and these are now going to be equivalent to the exact same tabs that you'll see on contacts. So I'm actually going to show it on contacts here, and go to Rudy Romano. So these are from events on over are going to be the exact same as the bottom left buttons on contacts and properties, and that's going to be events, projects, history. In this case, it also shows leads, where that does not show up on the actual mobile app right now. Links attachments, which is the equivalent of file, and notes. Notes actually show up in the top here. So events is going to show you any upcoming activities that you have with a given record. In this case, it would show us events that we have scheduled with a property. In this case, it would show us events that we have scheduled with a contact. Now, if we wanted to schedule a new event from this contact screen, we would just click Event, and again, click on the plus button. And you're going to see probably a screen that is very similar to other time management systems that you've seen out there, where you enter a subject for what the actual event is. The notes allows you to, put in some information about what that meeting or what that phone call is going to be about. You can set the type, so if it's a phone call or a meeting, and so on down the list there. And let me bring up a contact and do the exact same thing here, because it'll actually be, or at least bring up the window. So then you can set the actual time and date that it's going to be occurring, and this will just take whatever, a lot of this is going to look different on your actual phone, because this is actually using Samsung specific UI, but it'll take the phone's UI in that case. You can set up if you want it to have a reminder pop up for you on the app. Set a priority project. So this allows you to actually associate this upcoming activity with a specific project that you have. Meaning that, for example, in this case, let's say that we're scheduling a meeting and it pertains specifically to a deal that we're working Balboa Office Park. Now, this will be gone much more in depth on the webinar next week, or I believe it's next week, but on managing deals from start to finish. And so that'll delve much more into the time management side of things, and that's why it's kind of being skimmed on a little bit in this webinar, because it really is its own beast, and something that's deal management and time management is one of the more important things that people use an application like this, so it definitely merits its own webinar in that case. Let's see. Continuing on, this is also where you can see any projects that contact or property relates to. History is going to show you your historical correspondence with that person, be it phone calls, meetings, everything is going to show up under the History tab and show any notes for that as well. So that's definitely an important thing in the field, is being able to create history records on your contacts so that you can remember that you did something in that case. So on the mobile app, it's just a matter of hitting the plus button once again, and again, the screen is going to look remarkably similar to a scheduled activity, as you can kind of think of events and history records as two sides of the same coin. Events just being things that haven't happened yet, history being things that have, of course, happened at this point. Links allows you to view and add links between different types of records. By default, you're going to see links that have the properties that contact owns or is an agent for, is a property manager for. And simply put, if you click on the actual record here, it'll open up that record in another window there, where we can then see it kind of from the other point of view. We now see the owner on the property record as opposed to vice versa. Let's see, attachments. So attachments works a little bit differently, but between the mobile app and the online web version of it. But at the same point, in that right now the attachments allows you to attach any types of documents from the online version or the web version, but with the mobile app you can only attach a single photo as of right now. The attachment capability from your phone will be forthcoming, but that's a little bit down the road, as being able to read that information is a lot more difficult than we thought it was. So if you need to attach any sort of documents, you would need to do that from either the desktop or the web portal version. However, like I did show you, when you're adding or modifying a contact record, if you click on the picture or the section there that has that picture, or click Edit first and then click on the photo, you can either take a photo or choose a photo. So as of right now, you can add exactly one photo to each of the properties or contacts in your database from the mobile app, but that ability to actually attach files is something that's forthcoming as well. And then finally, I wanted to mention this button right here, Analyze/Market. So for any of you that have the RealNex Market Edge platform, which includes the previously called REI-wise investment analysis and lease analysis. The Analyze/Market button will copy the information from this building and create a new investment analysis with the information that was already filled in on that listing, and create basically a link between the two of them. So that's just one example of one of the forthcoming integrations between the different parts of our platform there. There's going to be one other one that I'll be talking about on this webinar, and that's something you'll probably see coming a lot quicker in the near future, are those integration pieces that allow you to kind of share the information between the different applications. Let's see. All right, one thing I did want to, and we'll be wrapping up here in a moment, but one thing I did want to talk about, and this is actually the key benefit of having an online-only database, although to be honest, it's not really something you can't easily get around otherwise, but there is one thing that online-only databases have the ability to do that the mobile version, or that the desktop version does not. And if you have an online-only database, under My Account, under Personal, you'll see two other options there that don't exist on a database that also has a desktop component, and that's Outlook Sync, which synchronizes actually directly with a Microsoft 365 account, which functionally works very similar to the Office, to the Outlook Sync on the desktop. But it also does have the capability for the Google Sync. And this will be brought to databases that have the online version as well as the desktop version, but there's a few hurdles we have to overcome before releasing that. But what this allows you to do is actually synchronize the information on your Google account with the online CRM, meaning you can synchronize your contacts, your calendar, as well as track emails as history records. We did actually do a webinar already on setting up this integration, so you can check that out at our knowledge base, or we're going to be talking about it again in the near future on the project setup, as email integration is a big part of that as well. But I did just want to make sure to mention that, as it is one thing that is only available for online-only database users. Now, the reason I said it's not really something you can't circumvent is that Outlook can also synchronize with Office 365 as well as Google Apps for Business. So 99% of people can still synchronize with Outlook and get the same functionality as of right now. But we actually do plan to add more functionality to that in the near future, so we want to make sure to kind of level the playing field on that one as well. And then one thing I wanted to talk about on the mobile app only. So let's go back to the menu. So first off, there's a support and feedback if you do have any issues that occur, or anything that you might want to see changed, any suggestions that you have. If you click on the support feedback button there, you can either contact us at support or hit feedback in order to, give us your ideas of what you think could be made better. I mean, we've gone through many years of customers telling us what's going to be better for us, and have learned that, the people that use your software are generally going to know what exactly they want. So we always love to hear from you, and any feedback that we can get on that's always going to be great. Definitely also, if you have a chance, rate the app on the appropriate store, either on the Android Play Store, Google Play Store rather, or the Apple Store. Now, there's two other buttons that are available on the mobile app that are not integrated as of yet on the web version. That's going to be Deal Rooms, which integrates directly with the Deal Room functionality on the Market Edge, which is included in the previously called REI-wise as well. And that will delve into quite a bit more on the projects webinar, as deal rooms are exactly in that sort of wheelhouse. The other thing, though, is the listing search. So apparently I did that wrong. So the listing search button, when clicked, will give you a number of different options to search on. And from here, you can search for specific types of properties, and it's going to actually search the same place as the RealNex.com main page. So if we click minimize notifications here, you'll notice there's a free listing search here. And that's actually what this is replicating, which has an aggregate of the information on all of our listing platforms in one place. So you can type for a specific address. Let's say I want to just find anything in Gilbert, Arizona. So I want to find all for sale properties in Gilbert. I can hit search, and on the fly, quickly and easily search for all of these buildings that are available on the listing platform. It'll show who the actual contact agent is, in addition to basic information about the property. But in addition to that, if you click more here, you'll see a little plus button. What that will do is it would take the listing information from our listing platform and add that listing directly into your CRM, and it'll fill in the address, the type, and so on. So you can then fill in more further details from there. And that will actually have more functionality added as time goes on, but that's just the first ability. But now on the fly, you can always, let's say you're meeting up with a potential client, you can find all those matching properties right away and add them to your database for later use. Now, one thing I did want to talk about to everybody before we sign off, and if you have any questions, now is definitely a good time to ask them. And hold on one second. So I have a couple more things that I do want to point out, but ask your questions now, and I'll get to them in the next couple seconds here. But one thing that Sarah wanted me to make sure to point out to everybody is right on our homepage, after you click minimize this notification, or if you just scroll down a bit, you'll see this section here. We put it all together. If you click the Join Webinar button, that will bring up a list of all of our upcoming webinars, and Sarah's been hard at work putting this together, so definitely give it the attention that it deserves and sign up for these beneficial webinars. We'll have one on, for the most part, actually, 4 out of the next 4 are actually going to focus on the core CRM as well. No, 3. How to manage a deal is going to be about project management. Spring cleaning is cleaning up the database, and then we'll have one on advanced importing techniques in the near future. But keep checking this page, as we're going to constantly be adding new webinars to it and bringing more of these to you as often as we possibly can. So there was a question that came in. Does the desktop version also allow to use the Analyze Property feature? Not as of yet. They just have not added that button to it. But if you're using the desktop version, you can synchronize the information to the web, which is the exact same database. So, I mean, this database that I actually log into on, not that one. This database that I actually log into here is an exact mirror of the database that I have on my desktop. So, I mean, at that point, if I click on Three Flags Plaza and click Analyze/Market, it's the same property either way. I'm not sure what our roadmap looks like for that as to when that's when or if that's going to be added as functionality. I'm not 100% sure on that. And one issue with that is that the desktop version has the capability of working offline, whereas there's no way to communicate with an online service in that case. But that's just really a hurdle more than anything. So that's all of the questions that it seems that we had today. If any of you do come up with anything, by all means, definitely reach out to us. You can always shoot us an email at support@realnex.com. But you can also take a look at our knowledge base. If you're logged into the RealNex portal, on the left panel here, you can take a look at the knowledge base here. And that'll have a number of articles. A number of them will also be emailed out to you after this webinar that'll be relevant to what we discussed here and kind of give you a reminder of what we talked about, as well as some step-by-step guides that go a little bit more in depth on what we discussed here today. So, Sarah, that's about all I had in this case.
All right, thanks, Bobby, and thanks for attending. We will be posting a recording of this online, and we'll send that out to everybody who registered, along with some links to some helpful knowledge-based articles provided by Bobby. So we hope that you will visit our webinar button on our homepage frequently and that you'll join us again. Thanks so much.